Alright, welcome back to the second part of the tutorial. This time I'm going to go over the editor as well as the upload process at the end once the chart is finished. So we're going to start out by getting Miku Miku World. I'm going to put the download links in the description for it. This is how the folder looks like when it's fresh out of the oven. After extraction. So when you start out the editor for the first time, you're going to have to set up a little bit of the UI elements to fit your preferences. I, for example, don't really use presets all that much at all, and only rarely use the layers themselves. So I'm going to move all the stuff that I rarely use to the left-hand side. Then after that, I want to set up the timeline. So I'm going to settings and timeline and just increase the lane width to a comfortable 60 pixels, for example. You need a little bit more space left because of the waypoints as well as BPM and time signatures and high speeds. So this is perfectly fine. You can also change the colors if you want, but it's not that important, and I prefer to work without a background. So with that said, there's also the divider settings. My personal preference for most of the time is 32 divisions. If you need a base 3 divider setting, you usually want 24 or 48. So you can chart triplets, but you can also just double click on this little area and just type in whichever number you need if you need like specific polyrhythms that aren't like the default, but that usually doesn't come up. So with all of that set up with our editor, what we want to go and do next is load in our music file. So we're just going to drop in the file that we cut the last time. And the first thing you want to do is set the tempo to the actual BPM of the song. So it was 96 last time. You can also set the music offset manually like this by sliding it around if you didn't fix it in Audacity already. But in most cases, you will already have done that simply because you want to have a preview for the song. Another thing of note is that once you load in the song file, it will automatically give you an approximate number of hit points based on the length of the song. The basic idea behind it is for every 6 seconds of gameplay, you want to give the player 1 hit point to play with. So longer songs aren't harder or easier to play, but this estimate is usually bigger than necessary simply because you have a little bit of silence at the beginning and you have more or less silence at the end. So in this case, it would be around 23 actually, because the song, like the playable portion of it is like 2 minutes 18. Right. With all of that said, we're going to go ahead and set up our prelude. So if you look closely here, you can see that the first bar begins at the silent portion, which isn't what we want actually, because that's not where the song begins. It's actually this point over here. So we're just going to add one extra beat to the time signature at the very beginning to just move the second bar over like this. And then we're just going to add a regular time signature over here to just fix it back to 4x4. That way we basically include the silent portion at the beginning as a prelude into the first bar. Then we want to go ahead and start making some waypoints. So the basic idea behind waypoints is that we want to be able to navigate through the song just without having to scroll up and down. So like this, you want to start with an intro, and then eventually you'll get to like the first verse, and then you'll get to pre-chorus or maybe the chorus immediately. But either way, that way you can just jump around and immediately get to the specific sections you want to edit or copy. So this, for example, is going to be the pre-chorus. And then it's going to transition into chorus after a couple bars. Right, so this is the chorus. And I obviously would recommend doing it for the whole song in some manner, so you can just navigate and jump through all the sections as you need. These sections basically also influence how this part of the statistics area is going to calculate. So it's going to give you a lot of information whether or not the section is way too hard or way too easy compared to the rest of the chart. So even for that reason alone, it's pretty useful to have these waypoints set up. So right, now that we have that set up, I'm not going to do the rest of the song, it's just for demonstration purposes. Let's get into the actual editing tools of this editor. So under by using 1, 2, 3, you can cycle through the 3 main tools to place notes. You have your tab tool, you have your hold tool, and your hold mid tool. And with all of them, you can place regular notes as well as flex, basically. So the idea behind it is you hold specific keys to modify existing nodes as well as modify the ones that you're placing. So in the case of flex, you just hold any of the WASD keys. So for example, if you hold D, you place a right flick. If you hold A, you place a left flick. And you can do that with existing nodes by just holding the buttons and just pressing on existing nodes. You can also delete nodes quite easily by just right-clicking on them with any of the with any of the placement tools. And holds are a bit specific in the sense that the modifier keys actually just modify the end note of it instead of the start note. So doing it like this, it'll give you a flick at the end of the hold. Hold mids are usually placed between the start and the end of a hold, but you can also place them above a hold, which extends them like this. Right, so that's kind of nifty in that sense. And specifically for hold mids, you also have 2 more extra modifier keys. First of is F, which turns it into a hidden hold mid, which the basic idea behind it is to just have something to modify the trajectory of the hold connectors without actually giving you like an increase in combo count and all of that. And the second one is skip notes, which are basically regular hold mids with the exception of the fact that they perfectly just follow the regular trajectory of the hold. So with that, you can kind of like do these funny little decimal placements without actually having to calculate them. You can just move them around like this. So it's kind of nice if you want to just have a conga line of these notes perfectly aligned with the rest of the hold diagonal. All right, with that in mind, let's move on to the next thing, which is our other modifier options like flipping and mirroring. So if you have a selection of notes like this and you select them and you just want to flip them around, you can do that with CTRL+F. So right now it doesn't matter if I mirror or flip them, but if I only select like one half of them and press CTRL+F, it flips them in place. But if I want to have this half of the selection and mirror them to the other side, you can do that with CTRL+SHIFT+F, which flips them like based on the center axis and not just their own center axis. You also have clamp and widen, which is C and X. Basically, you're just using these to like widen the selection or clamp it down more towards the center. And yeah, those are like your main tools at your disposal to quickly move around notes and all of that. So with that in mind, let's move on to the next point, which is your view settings. Sometimes you need to display the hitbox for notes just to be sure what you're doing. So in the case of the horizontal hitbox, this is pretty easy to remember because it's always the same for every kind of note. But the vertical hitbox is definitely important to understand what you're looking at. So the green section, this is your quote-unquote bad hitbox. This will give you a miss if you press the note in that timing window. The main idea is obviously to just punish people for spamming your game. And so what can happen is if you have a constellation like this where you have two flicks going in the same direction and the second one has its bad window in the middle of the first one, you're going to trigger the second one as soon as you play this one with a perfect judgment, which is not good. So for that specifically, we have an extra set of modifier keys, which basically just serve to reduce the early window of notes. So you have E, R, and G, and so G reduces the early window to good. Then you have great and you have perfect. So G is good, R is great, and E is perfect. And that way you basically deal with this sort of overlap between these two notes. Right. With that in mind, there is not much else to talk about in the editor itself, so I'm just going to save this file and I'm going to show you how to upload it. So I'm just going to do that. I don't need to calculate it again. And with all of that in mind, it's now saved, so we can go to BlueStacks and just upload our chart file. So we're going to levels, create, type in the title of the song, the artists, the description of it. If you don't want to write anything in here, you can still at least write the length of the song. Mainly because people want to know approximately what they're signing up for, so for that reason it's kind of useful here. As well as you want to include at least a tag that shows whether it's the full version of the song, the cut version, or maybe even an extended version. In our case, it's the cut version, so we're going to go with that and set a rating. And then after that, we're going to include the cover file, which is the thumbnail for the song. Then we're going to add the whole music file that we cut. So it's that one. Then the preview, which is the short version that we cut in the previous video, which is in my case in previews folder. And the data file, which is what we just saved in the editor itself. So this is that one. So you can also add a background if you'd like to, but it's not necessary. So I'm just going to create the level real quick, and then you can basically just immediately move on to use watch mode to preview your chart in autoplay. So yeah, there we go. You can see the notes playing, and that's basically all you need to work on your PC. You can play test it if you want and do whatever else is necessary. But yeah, that concludes the this portion of the tutorial. And in the next tutorial, I'm going to go over like all the things you need to actually think about while charting. All right, that should be it for now.